being kind of motion applied, but formerly McLaren Applied, that ethos of how can we push the boundaries, we're always trying to look ahead. So for us, that wave four that's really 2026 onwards is as there are more and more EVs entering the marketplace, there's an increasing need to differentiate. I think brands have spent, in some cases, billions over the
Yeah,
years
yeah.
defining what their brand DNA is and the customer experience that they want to deliver.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Advanced Engineering Talks, a podcast created by the Advanced Engineering team. A Talks brings together some of the newest and most innovative minds in engineering and manufacturing to help better the future for our industry. We hope you enjoy the series.
Hello and welcome everybody once more. Jeremy Whittingham here, back with you again, interviewing on behalf of Advanced Engineering Talks. I'm once again delighted to bring you another of these editions, these podcasts, where, as we say with everyone, innovation never sleeps. My guest today is Paolo Bargiacchi, Director of Electrification at McLaren Applied, which you may know has just recently rebranded to Motion Applied. Now, Paolo basically runs the electrification business, leading a team of around 50 product managers, program managers, and sales managers across the organization. Of course, really, we might imagine a lot of the background of the technologies and innovations come from F1. The DNA is there. But obviously what McLaren or Motion Applied are doing is really developing that across sectors such as automotive, aerospace, military, maritime. So really exciting, really excited to talk to you. Welcome and thanks for joining us, Paolo.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Great to talk with you this afternoon. Yeah.
Great. And yeah, it's a nice Friday afternoon. It's sunny, and I think you might be having a few days off next week. So a nice laid back chat is good. And I thought I'd just start off with you going ahead and giving us a bit of a potted history of the McLaren Applied and Motion Applied background.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first part of that name, McLaren, is very famous. The second half, kind of less so. So the history really is the enterprise has existed for more than 30 years. We were part of the McLaren Group. It was a spin out of the racing division, and it entirely existed around taking technologies and a kind of IP that was developed in that motorsport arena and looking to repackage it into different products that could then be sold to the entire grid of Formula One was the starting point. But then other industries, and that was kind of the applied nature of the innovation over the years. What it did mean, though, was when we were in that structure, as you can imagine, when you've got siblings of a race team and a supercar manufacturer, you are the smallest sibling in the group, and that's got a lot of different implications around where budgets are spent, for example. And over those kind of 30 years, the business grew and always had a motorsport core, but often kind of reacted to a lot of inbound. It was a lot of engineering consultancy. We would develop kind of one-off products catered to a customer's needs. Sometimes that was the racing team's sponsorship, for example. But about 4 years ago, we were acquired by a private equity firm called Grable Capital Limited, and spun out.
So is that when you totally separated really from the McLaren Group, I guess?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we were a separate entity from then on. And with it came a complete kind of restructuring of how Applied actually did its business as well, which was far less consultancy based and far more kind of strategic product based. And with that, we organized into 3 business units: motorsport, which was still the core. And as an example, we do the standard ECU for every Formula One car on the grid. So almost whoever wins, we win is kind of how we like to position it. But then we've got 2 business units that are almost like the startups within the company. One is connected intelligence, and that looks at primarily repurposing everything that we learned about telemetry and how to offboard data from a race car in a busy environment and use it to improve passenger Wi-Fi on public transport like trains, which I think is, that's something that everyone can relate to in their daily lives, that connectivity is not always the best. So we've got that division. And then the division that I look after, which is electrification.
Yeah.
And we've been focused primarily to date on onboard electrification, specifically inverters that go in, a powertrain for electric vehicles.
Right. And that's one of the topics that one of your colleagues is speaking about at Advanced Engineering this October, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we've also been growing quite recently is the offboard side of electrification. So EV chargers, because you need both ends of the plug to work.
Indeed, yeah. So what are the challenges at the moment? I mean, I think onboard is interesting for us in terms of what we cover with power electronics, especially being a real growth area across the automotive visitors and exhibitors that we talk to. So I'm guessing that is power electronics, really, isn't it? But what are the big challenges that you're finding with onboarding electrification?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. We try to take a bit of a step back and view the market in terms of a series of waves in terms of automotive electrification. The first wave was kind of the pioneers back in 2008, the original Tesla Roadster, the Nissan Leaf, really pioneering innovation, the first kind of EVs. And it took about 7 years for OEMs to kind of catch up with that wave two, and that was the rush to market. And I was at JLR at the time when we launched the Jaguar I-Pace, and it was competing with the Audi e-tron and the Mercedes EQC, etc. But fundamentally underneath, for both of those cases, from a technology perspective, it was off-the-shelf products and technologies and trying to shoehorn them into existing chassis and platforms. So it was very unoptimized.
Yeah.
Wave three is everywhere we've been from really 2020 to roughly today. And that's that migration to dedicated electric vehicle architectures. And with that, from a technology, a power electronics perspective, the migration from 400 volts to 800 volts, delivering the ultra fast charging times, and silicon IGBTs to silicon carbide MOSFETs. And that's got this domino effect of efficiency gains. So because your power electronics is more efficient, you can, for example, have a more efficient cooling system and a smaller lightweight battery, and in turn the whole proposition kind of improves. Being kind of Motion Applied, but formerly McLaren Applied, that ethos of how can we push the boundaries, we're always trying to look ahead. So for us, that wave four, that's really 2026 onwards, is as there are more and more EVs entering the marketplace, there's an increasing need to differentiate. I think brands have spent, in some cases, billions over the years defining what their brand DNA is and the customer experience that they want to deliver. And powertrain has always been a big part of that, engine noise, responsiveness, how it sounds, etc.
Yes.
And arguably EVs take a lot of that away, and they can be a bit one-dimensional. And they're brilliant for immediate torque response, but outside of that, there's not much to differentiate. So we're looking at how we can use advanced power electronics, but then also what that hardware enables from a motor control software perspective to bring that back, whether it be optimizing NVH by either mitigating kind of noise at the source, at the motor, or actively injecting harmonics to create a new authentic EV sound.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's an interesting approach that we've seen some OEMs already take. I mean,
Hyundai, I'm guessing, especially some of those ones like your Porsches, which are sort of drivers' cars, aren't they? I suppose, who want that experience of the noise and vibration of the road and the propulsion system, I guess.
Absolutely. And as a kind of bridging approach, we've seen Hyundai with like the Ioniq 5N and now the 6N do simulated gear shifts and kind of augmented noise through speakers, which I think shows that there's a market for, like say, drivers that really care about engagement and driving. But we think that there's maybe a more EV authentic approach rather than a replication of combustion engines, which can drive us
Yes, I was going to
forward.
say there's something a little bit, well, fake about it, some people might say, but linking it to the workings of the new propulsion system makes it a lot more authentic sounding, doesn't it? I imagine. Yeah.
It does. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about options that as a tier one supplier, we can create for the OEM, because, you know, a Rolls-Royce brand will want to just use the technology to improve refinement, get rid of all the noise. But like you say, a more sporting brand like a Porsche might want to lean on it for a bit more, you know, driver engagement.
That's interesting. And so are you producing now a lot of this kind of power electronics or drives for, you know, volume manufacturers now, and they're using them in a volume manufacturing, you know, setup?
Yeah, so our first inverter actually was back in 2013 for the McLaren P1, the kind of the world's first hybrid hypercar. And what we did, which is typically what we do within McLaren Applied, Motion Applied, but maybe the other way around, we took the technology from automotive and then brought it into motorsport and used that as the fast track R&D ground, learned the boundaries of the technology, how to really push the limits, and we brought it back out into automotive. Typically, we do it the other way. We start with motorsport and expand out.
That's unusual, I guess.
But over the kind of 12 years now, we've developed onto our 5th generation inverter. And harking back to what I said about previously, we would have specific products for a customer that they would commission. Now we've invested in this standard product, the IPG5, we call it, which is an 800 volt silicon carbide inverter, primarily for automotive. But I think one of the things that has been really interesting is automotive has certainly been the lead industry for moving to electrification. But e-mobility we're seeing is passing across all of the kind of adjacent markets now. So whether that be aviation or marine or off-highway, they're more nascent, but they're all starting to pick up. And so that's really exciting for us, having that opportunity to kind of deliver that high performance product into high performance automotive, but also these other markets that really works for.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And do you think which one of those markets outside of automotive do you think is driving the fastest there in that regard? Do you think is the one that's really coming out at you more than the others, or not necessarily?
It's a good question, and it could potentially be in two different ways. I think aerospace is certainly pushing the limits of the technology more, you know, particularly kind of eVTOL, where the power to weight ratio and, you know, performance density is key. That will really push the technology. But obviously that comes with quite a high bar for certification and a longer process from that side of things. Whereas something like marine might be less demanding from a performance requirement perspective, but there's less red tape. So adoption could pick up more quickly there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that battle does win out.
No, that's an interesting point, actually. We're certainly sort of, you know, finding ourselves getting more involved in the marine sector and the maritime sector with visitors, attendees at the show. And I went to the SeaWorks show in Southampton a few weeks back, and certainly electrification was a big, was a big issue. I think a lot of them were talking about sort of hybrid kind of approaches at this stage. Anyway, interesting. But there's a lot happening in the marine sector. Now I wanted to go back to the rebrand, and McLaren Applied, now Motion Applied. you've probably touched on this, I think, with some of the what you've been talking about, and it becomes clear as to the thinking behind it, I think. But how's that going down as well? Are you still going to somehow refer to the McLaren DNA in that, or do you think that will ultimately drop off, or and what's the sort of thinking behind it? What was the sort of drive behind Motion Applied?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really pertinent question for our business at the moment. And really, it's just a reflection of our ongoing investment in becoming an independent business. So,
Right.
like I said, when we separated from McLaren Group, we still had, and we still do have, a lot of ties. Of course, our DNA is motorsport heritage, and it's the people that we've had. My chief engineer has been with the business 31 years. So he really has worked on everything since kind of the inception. What we've been slowly doing, we've been moving, firstly, our kind of engineering offices. We got our own place, our new IT stack, everything that was our own. The next wave is kind of, now we want to have an asset that we can own and start to build our own kind of equity in. And with that will come additional kind of factors like our operations. It's currently in the main McLaren building still. Over the next year, we're investing in, again, setting that up as a kind of independent as well. So it's all part of this growth to try to stand alone as a business now. McLaren will always be a part of our DNA. It's the heritage in the people and the way that we approach things and try to push the boundaries. One of the things that's interesting is we've got the Motion Applied kind of, let's say, parent company type view. But I think what you'll also see is each business unit starting to add more of their own kind of sub-branding over the next 12 months, which really then starts to add equity to the product lines that we're developing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the Motion Applied is a sort of umbrella brand. That makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like standard sort of good approach to rebranding, and it makes absolute sense. Motion Applied in that regard. So it probably says more in terms of going across sector as well, doesn't it? And general application. Interesting. So I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you was what you think some of the overall challenges are from a big point of view in terms of electrification and the take up, and how we're going to do that in the UK, and what might the opportunities be for UK supply chain, and what skills we might need. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you think is going to be a big growth area, and there's a lot for us to do to grow the supply chain and to get the right skills?
Good question again. I think electrification's been a roller coaster ride for everyone involved. I think everyone's completely aligned that e-mobility is the end goal, net zero, but it's the transition to how we get there that has been throwing curveballs along the way, let's say. There's a huge amount of opportunity here in the UK. We've had projects funded by Innovate UK through the APC fund, where we built a consortium. So from memory, it was a dozen partners. It was a kind of £20 million program. And it was specifically focused on developing the end-to-end supply chain for automotive power electronics. So that was a fantastic initiative that got people all within the UK working together, anything from the substrate through to the packaging, and then through to us as system integrators at a tier 1 level. It gets you so far. I think what we're doing, then we need to reflect against the kind of global dynamics. Obviously, there's been all sorts of headwinds from wars that have occurred, political instability and changing motivations, and of course the insurgence of Chinese OEMs and Chinese tier 1s. the market there in China, they've had a huge adoption rate, and with that heavy investment in their technology, and really they are leading from an electrification perspective. It's interesting now, though, that actually that they're starting to see that it's a congested space in the Chinese market, and so they are aggressively price cutting against each other. And I think people are starting to recognize that that's not sustainable. So it'll be really interesting to see what the next moves are in that market and how that impacts the global kind of market and the rollout. We're starting to see the OEMs enter the European market. BYD is an example. XPeng, they're coming through. But it'll be really interesting to see how that consolidation really happens in that market and what Europe can do to keep innovating to continue to provide, our own vehicles. Obviously, we've got a fantastic history here in the UK about automotive. I mentioned, JLR that I worked at is one, but then we've got premier brands with McLaren, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, etc. And certainly then if you kind of tie it to motorsport as a niche, the UK is dominant. That Silverstone kind of area. Absolutely. I think at the moment it's 8 out of 10 of the Formula One teams are all based here in the UK. So I think for us, it's continuing to play to our strengths, which is absolutely innovation with a focus, and how we can really use that for competitive advantage. I think there's a lot of kind of disruption being thrown in with AI at the moment, which is really interesting. Obviously, you've got the kind of AI superpower tech giants and the hardware providers like the NVIDIAs of the world. But I more mean from how do we embed AI firstly in our processes to work more efficiently and create products faster, but then also embed AI into our products themselves. And like an example on the inverter side might be embedding that into the calibration process with a motor, so that it's far more kind of pick it up off the shelf, provide it a reference motor, and it kind of self-learns and does all of that system pairing itself. So there's all sorts going on. I mean, the big transition that I spoke to earlier about silicon IGBTs to silicon carbide MOSFETs, there's a big question mark over where does that go next? Will we all transition to gallium nitride? GaN has certainly taken over for kind of lower power applications, DC-DCs, that kind of thing. There's a lot of limitations at the moment on the higher power end. Typically at the moment it's kind of limited to 400 volts, but that offers a pathway for even more efficiency at potentially even lower cost. I think there's a lot of options to play at the moment, and really that's the main challenge, trying to navigate the path through.
Interesting. Do you see that there are opportunities in the supply chain in the UK to sort of supply in those areas? And also, does that rely on sort of rare earths and other kind of minerals, which can be a bit of a challenge, I think, at the moment?
Yeah, the rare earths is particularly prevalent on the battery side and the electric motor side. But in a very similar vein, the silicon carbide is very energy intensive to grow those raw materials, the wafers. It's a lot of energy that you need to put in.
We've got expensive energy in the UK.
Exactly. That's a key challenge. GaN does offer a kind of a more efficient route to growing. But I think it also depends on the market, because one of the things that we're seeing certainly at the moment is the defense market. And
of course,
there's a huge amount of strategic focus on that area, additional spend, particularly on innovation. And obviously for those kind of programs, UK sovereignty, UK supply chain, UK skill set is essential for MOD type programs.
Yes, of course.
And that always lies on the high performance competitive advantage end of the spectrum as well. So I think it's about how can we exploit that across multiple markets.
Really interesting, actually. Yeah, and the defence area, we're finding a lot of that. That sector is very much talking about, looking across other sectors to find innovation and partner and collaborate, of course. So even more than ever. But so I'm sure that's another big area that you're getting involved in or will do.
Yeah. Exactly right. And I think, they've recognized themselves that their typical procurement processes and the big primes and their kind of bloated programs is a model that doesn't work today, where, you're seeing the innovations kind of in Ukraine about people taking market drones and attaching different things to them to get, fast market solutions. So there's absolutely a recognition that they need to change, but obviously there's a lot of momentum there to try to combat. So you've got new entrants like Anduril and Palantir who are trying to disrupt in that space. And it's really interesting to see how us as a kind of a tier one can support that innovation and growth into new areas.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess my final sort of question perhaps goes to you and your background. Obviously, you've been working for some great organizations and doing really great stuff with Motion Applied now. What kind of inspired you to get into engineering in general, perhaps, and how far back did it go? I know we sometimes talk about, we've got a skills gap, which we do have, and we need to engage more STEM and early on in ages. I don't know how it kind of panned out with you, maybe quite early on at school, or anything on your background that's that you want to talk about on that.
Yeah, I think the way that I mentioned electrification is a roller coaster ride probably, describes a little bit my own journey as well, to be honest.
Oh, right. Okay.
So originally I started with mechanical engineering, and I would say I even fell into that. At school, I was relatively good at kind of maths and physics, and it was kind of coming to that point doing your A levels, and it was like, what next? And it was more my passion for cars, for automotive, and for motorsport, particularly F1. When doing the research that came up, engineering, this is what is behind all of the innovation. I think engineering, it doesn't have the same same recognition in the UK that it does perhaps in the European market or even in the US. It's not a protected title here. And engineer can describe all manner of things here in the UK. And as an example, when I mentioned to my mum that I wanted to go and do mechanical engineering at university, she thought that meant that I wanted to be a mechanic. Right. And there's, of course, nothing wrong with that. It's just completely different to what the engineering development side is. So I think there's definitely a awareness, and there's a learning kind of gap in the UK about how we push engineering. Coming back to your question around STEM, it really is that top of funnel type thing. And perhaps, one of my observations is that what we haven't done politically within the UK for a long time is have clear strategic initiatives where we've said, this is an area of technology that we want to be world leaders in, and that almost cascading so that people in the UK can see, okay, this is a future area of growth, this is career stability, this is going to be valuable, I can get on board with that. So I do think it really starts there.
That might be a bit more, I don't know, it might be a bit more reflected by the recent sort of industrial strategy things that have come out. Do you feel that was quite a useful document? I mean, obviously, a lot of talk, but it's got to be backed up and happen. But were you quite pleased to see what was in that?
Definitely. I think everyone will argue over what should be in it. You're never going to get a consensus. I think the point is more that they have made a line in the sand. They've outlined key strategic initiatives and backed them with a plan. So I thought that was excellent. I think, like you said, now it's about how we can kind of implement that. For me, then, as I went into engineering at university, I quickly kind of became biased towards an opportunity called Formula Student, which you may be familiar with. So this is where university students from around the world, they design, develop, build, and then race their own kind of junior Formula open wheel race car. And for me, it was the application of all the theory side that was, really interesting, and it probably did, distract me from my core studies quite a lot. But that got my foot in the door at JLR through an internship.
That's how these things happen, isn't it? Yeah,
in powertrain research. And again, that was kind of eye-opening to what does engineering look like in the real world. A lot of engineering at OEMs is about being an integrator. So then you do rely on your supply chain.
Right.
I was in R&D, so that was quite good. Relatively, you got to get involved in more development itself. But actually, being on their graduate scheme, it was different placements around the organization, including non-technical, that took me in a different path. So I did a placement in product marketing and kind of product management, and really resonated with that. The idea of having to appreciate the technical side, but then also appreciate what are the requirements of the customer, what's the financial landscape of the business, what's the design and kind of pure marketing comms angle, and try to sit in the middle of that and balance that all off. And that kicked off my career in product management. So I started that on a kind of, firstly on the powertrain level for JLR, but then moved on to the vehicle side, looking at planning their next generation kind of Range Rover products. I went from there to Bentley Motors, which was a great opportunity to look after their kind of bespoke special vehicles division called Mulliner.
Mulliner,
I mean,
that was it's Crewe, isn't it? They're based, is that right?
It is in Crewe. I was living in Birmingham at the time, so that was a lot of commuting. But
I was sort of brought up around that area, so I know it a bit. But
okay, Pims Lane. I had a fantastic year there. I really enjoyed it. I thought the leadership team were great, products are excellent, and the people were brilliant to work with. But actually, I'd done all of my career to date then in automotive, and I wanted to challenge myself with a bit of a change. And there was a role at McLaren Applied that came up, as it was then, in micromobility. So it was still taking my kind of transport-related knowledge, but in a micromobility proposition with a companion kind of software app, and it was all a bit different. And I joined for that reason. Unfortunately, maybe about 9 months in, that project kind of got reshaped, because what we did as a company is we took over Van Moof, who you may be aware of, but they are a big e-bike manufacturer in Europe. And so we acquired those and kind of integrated them with our own projects. And as a result, I moved across to McLaren Applied's automotive division. So I was back in the automotive realm, but on the tier one side instead of the OEM. So when you're at the OEM level, your customer is the general public. And that comes with a bunch of requirements and challenges. When you're a tier one, your customers are the OEMs and really the engineers in the OEMs. So it's a far more technical product development and sale. So after having taken that engineering hat off for a while, it took me, a fair while to get back into that mode, and certainly coming from a mechanical engineering background to then pick up the kind of electrification, electrical engineering side was a challenge. But since then, I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities to work with incredible people and be with the company at the right time to grow that business unit. And as you said, now have the privilege of leading the team, developing products on board and off board, like I said.
Well, you're doing very well with it. Yeah. I mean, you're moving up the echelons there, which is great. Yeah, it must be very satisfying. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Really interesting. And sometimes these things, some things sort of happen a bit by chance, don't they? And as well. And it sounds like you've had a great sort of combination of hard work and interest in the sector and putting yourself out there and serendipitous meetings,
Absolutely.
And which is what life's all about, I suppose. But
it is, and through it all, though, what you're absolutely right at is our team, is very diverse.
Right.
There is, of course, we've got the hardware, power electronics side, there's the embedded software, and then how that's tested, application software, systems, etc. And trying to get all of that capability at a high level in the UK is a challenge. So of course we use we use a work-based people on visas that have come from all around the world because we do attract like the best talent. But there's definitely some challenges for skills shortages in the UK. I think the work that people like the ERS Skills Hub through Coventry University, the work that they're doing is fantastic. We certainly try to support STEM outreach, particularly local to Woking, where the business is based. But I think it is broader than that. Like I said, there's a broader angle of how do we encourage people to get into engineering. And when I say people as well, it's that gender diversity. I mean, it is that shocking moment of going from A levels where your peers in class are 50% boys and girls even when you're doing maths and physics, but then going to university and that becomes more like 90-10 in engineering.
Right.
So I think there's this cyclic kind of problem where there's not enough women in engineering leadership positions, which then doesn't give women the role models early on in to aspire. So we've certainly got to kind of continue to be proactive about encouraging total diversity. I know I've mentioned gender there, but it is total kind of diversity amongst our teams, starting at that STEM engagement early careers level.
Definitely. Yeah, that's really exactly correct. And how far do you go back sometimes where you say you support some of the schools in the area? Do you go as far back as into primary, or is it mainly secondary, or is it both? Or
it is both. It is. We do very different kind of challenges and outreach for the different markets, and we sponsor a former student in the UK as an event. So we've kind of got the staggered system, and it's changing all the time.
Well, we usually have a Formula student team demonstrating something at Advanced Engineering. You've probably seen before. I think that electrified versions as well. We've had a couple of universities doing that.
And it's all about how do we make it relevant and engaging for the audience, whatever that audience is at the time.
No, hugely interesting. We're sort of running out of time, really. We could talk a lot more, I'm sure, Paolo. But I think it's probably time to start to bring conversations to a close. But really interesting stuff. And I think with this rebrand as well, it's obviously a sign that you're leveraging into the next phase, and we're going to see a lot more of you across lots of different sectors. And also, it's great that you're coming to Advanced Engineering. You've got a couple of speakers. I think you've got one speaker, as I say, on onboard electrification and the automotive forum, and I believe we've got another slot for another speaker from McLaren Applied looking at the defence sector, I think. So in the Aero and Defence Forum. So that will be interesting too, just to show how you're going across these sectors. Really good to know. So hopefully that will be really be well received.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited for A, the event, and then B, us as a company, like you say, as we start on this new chapter and try and grow these markets.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's just for me to say thank you, everybody listening, and thank you very much for my guest today, Paolo Bargiacchi, Director of Electrification at Motion Applied, formerly McLaren Applied. Paolo, thanks very much. Feel free, everybody, to look at the show website. The show, of course, is at the NEC, 29th and 30th of October, and the website is advancedengineeringuk.com. You can also have a look at other podcasts that we've been doing over the past couple of years. Some really interesting people as well as Paolo, of course. Thank you. I'll sign off and see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jeremy.